Hello and welcome back to another day at the YSI Plenary. Today is Tuesday, it's November 10th. We're so excited you're here for a ton more question sessions. And it's also our main man, Jay Bucklington's birthday! Wish him a happy birthday on Twitter, on Facebook, in the comments, wherever you are. We're celebrating throughout the day. Now, we are overwhelmed by the amount of activity we've had over the past couple days, especially yesterday. So many of you tuned in. Thousands of you were there watching the streams, and a lot of you participating in the sessions as well. So thank you so much for being with us. Today, we've got a lot more coming. Thomas, what's going to happen?
Well, we're back in the Questions Fair. The Questions Fair is going to be running with world-class speakers all week. Yesterday, I felt we were really getting the hang of it. Now, we're realizing that over the course of this plenary, we're going to come together to suggest questions. Yesterday, after each session, young scholars were suggesting questions. They were rephrasing each other's questions, and in the end, we uploaded them all into the graph. If you are watching from YouTube or from Facebook Live or anywhere else but the YSI plenary side, make your way into the plenary side, because that's where you can engage, that's where you can suggest your own questions. And now we actually uploaded almost 50 questions yesterday. I think we're getting close to 100 questions in the graph. You can go in and see all the questions that have been suggested, and you can start picking the ones you like. So let's get into that process so that by the end of the week, we will end with a final list. And for all of those who are just coming in now, wondering how they can participate, we have a small little video explaining how you can engage with the Question Fair sessions.
First, go to ysiplenary.org and click the night sky. This is the Questions Fair, where each star is a question, and each group of stars, or constellation, contains questions within a particular topic. You can find Questions Fair sessions in the schedule in the left sidebar and join them from there. Just enter the session and join the Zoom. As you listen to the speaker motivate their questions, think about which questions you believe to be pertinent for YSI. While the speaker talks, suggest your questions to your peers by entering them into the panel. This is not a Q&A. The questions are suggestions for research in YSI, not a question for the speaker to answer. Take a look at all the questions that were suggested and like the ones that you think are best. The questions moderator will select the most liked questions and present them to the speaker for a comment. These questions will be added to the constellation, where they can be further refined. Refine the questions by finding the best exact phrasing. Suggest a rephrasing yourself, or like the rephrasings that you think are good. After the session is over, you can find the submitted questions in the constellations. As a plenary participant, you can mark your 10 favorite questions in the graph. Just click the star in the corner of the questions card, and they will be added to your YSI profile. The most popular questions will make it into the final list.
And we're back in the lighthouse, getting ready to go up to the Economic Visions constellation, where Andrew Sheng, our mentor and speaker, is waiting for us. Andrew, it's really great to have you. It's always a pleasure to listen to your inspiring words, questions, provocations, and if there's anything, the Economic Visions constellation is exactly the place for you to be. And looking forward to your input. Now let me make a final check that we're ready before we all beam up. Sasha, check. Andrew, check. Seung-Woo Kim, yeah, check. We're ready to go. See you up there.
Economic vision. Economic vision. Economic vision. Is this the whole system? It's the human condition to have no clue what you're missing. When's it best to move on individual missions? And when's it in your interest to uphold the holism? What's your economic vision? Let's talk economics. The process of production and its profits and progress. The science by which nation states and trade are made prosperous. And plausibly is often that which causes their problems. Is economics topic what we think's gonna happen so we can make the right predictions such that profits are maximum? Or is it for humanity's communal advancement? Have we traded religion for enchantments of mammon? I'm just asking, I take it on trust, that there are others who can understand the task as they must. Are we masters of the system or is it using us? That's the question, ain't it? Economic vision or bust? Economic vision. Economic vision.
And we're on. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another question fair session, this time in the constellation of economic visions and with the talk of Andrew Sheng. You have mostly heard everything, and by now I hope you are all acquainted with how the platform works. I'll just shortly repeat. As we listen to Andrew, we want to suggest questions, most pertinent questions that we think can be posed in the context of his talk that we can then discuss later, and if they get to be the best among our questions and they end up among the 100 questions chosen during the plenary. At the same time, you can also like questions using the heart button on the right-hand side. And the questions that get most of the likes among the suggested questions will be asked to Andrew to comment upon. And without further ado, I hand it over to Kim Seung-woo and Andrew Sheng.
Hello, YSL, and good evening in East Asia. Welcome to the Question Fair on Economic Visions Constellation with Andrew Sheng. This year's event is hosted by the East Asia Working Group. I'm Seung-woo Kim. I'm a research fellow at the Graduate Institute Geneva and a coordinator of East Asia Working Group. On behalf of the Working Group and the YSI, I would like to welcome all of you and extend our gratitude to Andrew Sheng, always inspiring, distinguished scholar and mentor for all of us. Let me briefly introduce Andrew. Andrew Sheng is a distinguished fellow at Asia Global Institute, University of Hong Kong, chief advisor to the China Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission, and a former board member of Khazanah Nasional Berat, the sovereign wealth fund of Malaysia. He also served as an advisor to the UN Environment Programme inquiry into the design of a sustainable financial system. Mr. Sheng also serves as a member of the International Advisory Council of the China Investment Corporation, the China Development Bank, the China Securities Regulatory Commission, and honorary member of the trustees of Bank Indonesia Institute. Previously, he served as the chairman of the Securities and Futures Commission of Hong Kong and as a central banker at the Hong Kong Monetary Authority and at Bank Negara, Malaysia. Mr. Sheng has also worked at the World Bank. He's an adjunct professor at the University of Malaya and at Tsinghua University School of Economics and Management. Mr. Sheng is the author of From Asian to Global Financial Crisis, an Asian regulator's view of unfettered finance in the 1990s and 2000. I do strongly recommend you to read this book as a way to understand the crisis. He holds a BSc in economics and an honorary doctorate from the University of Bristol. Today, he will give us a great talk on economic paradigms, platforms, and planets, searching for the new worldview and important issues of today, including many of the current events. I believe, including young scholars at the YSI Asia Regional Convening last year in Vietnam have a vivid memory of Andrew's inspiring keynote. I'm pretty sure all of us will have another inspiring moment during this session. Without no further ado, I would like to hand it over to Andrew Sheng. Andrew, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kim. And happy birthday, Jay. It's such a great pleasure to be with YSI and to join this questions fair. Now, we live in very, very interesting times. This is the, to put it mildly, a crazy year in which anything was possible and anything is possible. So let me very quickly launch, as Kim has asked, what are the interesting questions that we should focus on in this age when we are being kind of attacked, confronted with issues that many of us had not confronted before. I mean, if it's just one of these issues, it would be very bad, but they're all coming to us at the same time. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about planet, paradigms, and platforms, because the big winner after this pandemic is clearly big government and big platforms, big tech, as it were. So let me very quickly start by saying, and I recently heard this from Christiana Figueres, who used to be a minister of the environment in Costa Rica, and is very much involved in the United Nations, climate change work. She tells this vivid story, and I think it's perfect. Imagine a very clear blue skies, a family sitting on the beach with other families building sandcastles. And then, away on the beach, away, in the sea, you see the tsunami coming. Now, you don't know it's a tsunami, okay? It just looks as if it's waves. And then the first wave, of course, is the pandemic. The second wave is the economic crisis. The third wave may be finance. And the big wave behind, longer, but of very big impact, as you all know, is climate change, climate warming. And the interesting question is, why are we still building sandcastles when we should be either running away to find another day or really think about how to save other people, etc.? So what are the interesting questions when we are facing so many crises from all over the place? So it's very clear. We are facing a great geopolitical crisis, right? In which, the US-China is at loggerheads. And it's not going to go away, and it's probably going to escalate. We have technology, kind of great potential to help us in solving, solutions like vaccines for the pandemic, helping, to work online. And yet, probably 90% of the people, probably less than that in the advanced countries, but 90% of the people are not prepared for the job losses. And then they have to go and do all the dirty work, all the frontline work where they are most exposed to the pandemic. And of course, there is this huge inequality that we have now seen. Millions are being thrown into the unemployment, a loss of healthcare, etc., etc. And at the same time, you have wonders of wonders. The central banks are able to create $7 trillion of new money. The governments are using this new money to try to rescue through fiscal deficits. Probably they've already pumped in 12 trillion, according to the IMF. And yet, we are not yet winning around the world on the COVID. Even though we may have, as the latest announcement suggests, we may have got a one vaccine, but whether that is deliverable to people, we don't know. At the same time, there are huge excess capacity, from the loss of jobs, airlines, retail, hospitality, trade, tourism are just kind of still suffering very, very badly. And so what is the crisis? The crisis is not just a health crisis. It's not just an inequality crisis. It's not just a technology, both the good side and the bad side. It's the demographic crisis. The rich countries are aging. The the emerging markets, face, depressed trade. And if the international quarrels carry on, are we moving towards war like 1930s? And can we continue to print more money? But actually, if you really think through it, they're all one problem: climate change, politics, inequality, justice. They are, as the French philosopher Bruno Latour says, it's all one issue. And at the bottom of this is a moral decision. Now, economics has tried to be quantitative. It has tried to be objective. But by being quantitative, it ignores the qualitative. And as George Akerlof in his presidential address, there's a paper that's wonderful called Sins of Omission. The economists, by trying to push for hard mathematical models, they ignore the narratives, the qualitative, the morality, the emotions. And this recent US election has shown how the country literally is divided. And it's not just the US that is divided. Many parts of the world are highly polarized. Everybody in their social bubbles, talking to the converter and refusing to believe what the other side says, so that they're talking cross each other. And there is this danger. You can see this. Protests are almost everywhere. People don't agree. It's a generational gap. There are problems with gender, race, religion. All of it are, reaching boiling points in certain countries and otherwise. So, some of these sins of omission comes from the paradigm that looks at the ideal, that looks at perfection, forgetting that the world is actually both good and bad at the same time. So when you paint each other as I am good and you are evil, when in reality, we are not just, each one of us is not just part good, part bad, and the other side is also part good, part bad. And we are entangled with each other because whatever I do will affect you. The pandemic shows this, and whatever you do affects me. So if we talk about the rap about holistic, we are in one world divided by many paradigms, by many different cultures, languages, beliefs, religions, values, and we don't know how to talk to each other. So if we have different values and paradigms, and the question is, will there be a theory of everything that covers the whole lot, right? If in physics we're trying to find a theory of everything, in social science, is it possible to have a theory of everything in social science, right? So and of course this is true of economics. Now, in the past, the mainstream, which was fundamentally neoclassical, tended towards, free markets, equilibrium, stability. And now we've moved beyond the linear, the mechanical, to emergence of chaos, conflicts, corruption, capture, crime, war. All the nasty things are coming to the surface. So suddenly you realize, my goodness, this is a false binary problem. It's not A or B, it's A and B. It's not state versus market, it's state and market. As many of the speakers in this Institute of New Economic Thinking, this plenary shows, like people like Mariano Mazzucato, basically the state is very entrepreneurial. And if the state is entrepreneurial, it actually can foster the market. So the idea that, you minimize the state and you maximize the market, well, can the market solve the problems of the pandemic? And the answer is either you use the market forces by means of pricing. Now, will the vaccine cost $1,200 US each? And can most poor countries afford such vaccines? Big question, right? Or the other one is the government solves this through regulation. The same with climate change, right? One of the biggest barriers to climate change action, even though scientists have been warning us for 20, 30 years, and even today, the young like Greta Thunberg are marching in the streets for climate change, there are some economists who say climate change is a market failure. And all you need to do is to create carbon taxes or carbon sort of trading of carbon, you'll solve this problem. It won't. We have to change our individual behavior to consume less, to love the planet, to love other people in order to solve our planetary problems. Because if we fight each other, if we do not cooperate, we cannot solve the planetary problems. And that comes back down to the US-China issue. Because as we all know, the US and the advanced markets were the greatest emission of carbon through history. Today, it is China and the emerging markets that are creating that carbon emission because they are learning how to become rich, right? So let me pose this issue between US and China in this simplistic manner. And I owe this to Paul Keating, the former Australian Prime Minister, who, if you go through his YouTube, he makes these brilliant speeches about the role of Australia in Asia, but he poses the question of the rise of China in this very simplistic but very powerful analogy. Before 1500, GDP per person was related to the population. So China, India, and the whole of most of Asia accounted for half of mankind and half of world GDP. But the rise of the West came with the maritime powers, conquest of the Americas, then colonialization, Africa, South Asia, India, and Southeast Asia. And through technology, changed the ability to generate per person capacity, per capita GDP way above the individuals. So in 200 years, the West rose, and a very small country with a small population like Britain can, have an empire that is 1/4 of mankind, right? And then China and India, went through this period. But in the 20th century, with the opening up of the internet, with the opening up of the economy, they learned science and technology, and suddenly they have begun to catch up. So now you have a very interesting situation. China is 4 times the population of the United States. Okay? The 4 times population, but at the moment, 20% of the per capita income of the United States. If it reaches 50% of the per capita GDP, it will be very clear China will be equal and may begin to overtake the United States in sheer GDP size. Now, the IMF has already calculated that by PPP, China has already overtaken the United States. But this competition is both cooperation and competition engagement. So the key question is, the question is not about has China won or has the United States won, etc. That's not the issue. In my view, the issue is, can the big powers cooperate so that the planet wins, humanity wins? That is not solved by calling each other names and not understanding each other. And therefore, there is this huge paradigm problem in all these issues, right? Now, these are very controversial issues, and I know all of you would have very, very different views about this, but I think I've reached the stage when, I should stop and open up for questions. all right? So this has been a fabulous, it's very difficult to summarize these complex issues in 20 minutes, but I think this is the time for me to hear what your views are, because I understand there are many new young scholars joining. And I think this is the time for dialogue. It's not about a one man monologue or one country monologue or dialogues talking past each other. We need to try and understand each other. This is the time to heal, right? Because of huge social divisions. So let me hear, all your views, and let me see whether I can answer them. Over to you, Kim.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Well, I cannot agree more about your diagnosis of the mainstream economics, that they're really trapped into the dichotomic view of the world, which result in the many problems for our proper understanding, because they divide rather than unite. So we fail to see the broader cause. For example, as you clearly mentioned, the issues of climate change. So I think you have suggested the key for young scholars to challenge the idea of dichotomy embedded in the economics. And we should find way for our new economic thinking by reflecting your idea of challenging the dichotomy. You also correctly commented that in this different changed paradigm, it is worthwhile to revisit the US-China relations, not as antagonistic conflict between two countries, but we need to be in search of a way for cooperation for these superpowers as a way to make a global, broader cause of the global. So let me move on to the questions raised by young scholars in the chat room. So I will start with the very first question. Why are the big techs the winners of the pandemic? I think you have briefly mentioned it at the beginning of your speech. So the question, some young scholars might have wondered.
Well,
Andrew?
Big tech wins because of the oligopolistic or monopolistic powers. All right. As you know, there is what is known as Metcalfe's law. Metcalfe's law basically says the value of the network rises exponentially with the number of users. So if the big tech has a platform and all human interaction is across networks, right? So if you really look at the valuation of these companies, they really look at two things. Number one, how many users? Number two, how fast is that user base rising? Okay? And the faster it rises, the more value from the market capitalization. So they can use their shares to buy up all their competitors, right? So essentially, if you look at Facebook, 2 billion customers, okay, right? Alibaba, probably about 1 billion, right? And then look at Facebook, YouTube, Netflix, all these, even Uber, right? The pandemic has shown that if we do not want to catch the infection, we do our work online. So suddenly, everybody start shifting much faster than before online. So you suddenly discover, my goodness, the classrooms can be done online. Now, it's not very comfortable. People have to change their techniques. We can have conferences like this on a virtual basis. So who wins? Whoever has that software, whoever has that platform is not only winning because of the advertising, they are winning because they can sell you services across that software, particularly in the cloud. Every time you need more capacity, they'll sell that to you. Every time they want to cross-sell some particular product, they'll sell to you. They have all your data, right? Everybody asks me, when you work in China, are you worried about the state having all your privacy? I say Google has all my information. In fact, if you go into Google, Google will know through the GPS exactly where you are, every day, because I have signed away my rights every time I use Google or any app. Do you agree to access my phone, my pictures, my address card, etc.? So to a large extent, the large big tech owns private information, which they then commercialize, right? And then they become huge gatekeepers. They not only own the big platforms, they also begin to buy up the newspapers, the TV networks. They own the copyrights of movies, etc., and increasingly become bigger and bigger. Now, if you really look at the top 5 to 20 big tech market caps, they are probably larger than the number 25 country to the 50 largest country in the world in terms of GDP. I used to joke that with the market value of Amazon, they can buy up the real Amazon. Not that they can do this, but they can make an offer to buy it up and preserve the real Amazon. Okay, now, but that's controversial, but that's how big tech has become. And if you look at the stock market, where has all the big stock rises gone? It's been big tech, big pharma, big healthcare, right? And all the other ones like airlines. Now there's a rebound, but this is all related to the fact that big tech is going to be a big winner, and even the emerging markets now begin to understand. Without technology, without upskilling your workers, you cannot develop your country. Okay? The 1970s model was about manufacturing and exports, right? Suddenly you discover a small country like Finland can invent Nokia and become one of the world's largest phone companies, right? If you invent an app, you can become overnight a unicorn or a billionaire. This is a huge shift in wealth and power. And suddenly, with power comes political power, political influence. And then the question then becomes, will they abuse it? Will they, use their monopolistic powers? Should we apply antitrust to big tech? This is a question no country has been able to answer as yet.
I think, Andrew, our working group also has a research cluster dealing with the issues of technology and economies. And then your comments will be very helpful for World Bubble organizers. I really appreciate it. So let us move on to the second question, which is, what is economics' role in climate change mitigation?
It is huge, but this is where mainstream economics has been a barrier rather than a, how shall I say, a helper, okay? When climate change first occurred, the scientists were doing all the studies. Now, as you know, science is not perfect. A lot of these models are projections, so the scientists were worried about the projections, and then started refining them. But when they presented their findings to the big policymakers and the economists, they woke up after 20, 30 years that they couldn't convince the economists, because the economists thought, well, there is a perfect solution to climate change. Climate change is a market failure, right? If we only get good markets going, we will solve climate change. Economists also has a tendency to believe in techno-optimism. Oh, we will soon find some technology that will solve this problem. Now, when you get the economists not agreeing with the climate scientists, the economists, the policymakers, well, will hesitate. You know, when you have controversy, a lot of policymakers muddle through. They hesitate and they won't commit because politicians are very careful about how people think. So, and as long as we're enjoying consuming on the never through consumption debt, it doesn't really matter because and this issue about markets was pointed out by Karl Polanyi, you know, in his debate with Hayek. You know, when Hayek said, well, you know, the market, the invisible hand, you know, the market self-order is great. Polanyi pointed out something that is a logical conundrum, put it this way. He said, the market is part of the economy. The economy is part of society. Society is part of the planet. So do you think a very small part, like the market, can explain the planet? It's a logical fallacy, right? And so I think, you know, the danger of economics is to become too siloed, too specialist, too blinded, too, sort of blindsided by, you know, if I study this deeper and deeper, I know more and more about less and less, right? I do not see the big picture. So the big picture is that we get heat from the sun, but if we produce carbon emission, we will then make changes to the atmosphere. We pollute the atmosphere, we pollute the seas, and then the whole climate warms up, and then the sea will rise, weather will change, water will get shortage, food will get shortage, the salt water, you know, as the water melts, will then effectively reduce food production, right? And the natural disasters, as we have seen, not that the 5 largest, warmest summers were in the last 5-6 years. So, and this is getting more and more serious. So economists cannot be saying, well, you know, I still want to debate what is the economic effect of 1% or 2% temperature increase, or whether we will be able to reduce our carbon emission, by alternative energies. The real danger is that if we don't act quickly, and this is a moral question rather than a pure economics question, it is an existential question. So I think the economics paradigm needs to be multidisciplinary. It needs to cover not just finance, the behavioral economics, technology, right? Climate change, but also morality. And that's why you begin to see it is so difficult when, you know, we are all like blind men feeling the elephant, all seeing parts of it and don't understand the whole. So we need to go back to narrative economics, as, you know, the Nobel laureate Schiller says, or as the Nobel laureate George Akerlof, who's talking to you guys, says, you know, the sins of omission. What are the sins of omission? Hardness bias. We only concentrate on the mathematics. If the mathematics cannot be quantified, we ignore the qualitative, right? So the Schiller idea is that we need a good story. Models are stories, but they're incomplete models. So we need a better story to tell you why climate change is existential, okay? And that economists need to have a better story to be able to convince everyone that we need to act and to act quickly.
Wow, that's really great answer to the question. I have to point two things from your comments that we might need to consider two things. The first is Polanyi's insight to re-embed the society. I mean, to re-embed the market into the society once again, and the imperative need to have an inter or sometimes transdisciplinary approach in order to tackle the climate issue for economics. Thanks very much. And maybe we should do some, again, reading group of the Polanyi's Great Transformation, which is also Rob Johnson's priority list.
Absolutely.
And move on to the third question. What is the most important ethical/moral issue for economics to address?
Well, let me say this. We human beings are never individuals. We live through a community. So whilst I totally respect the belief in individual freedoms, we must also consider our responsibilities to other human beings. And that is a moral question, right? Let me say this. I have believed, like many of you, the importance of human rights, individual freedom. But when I first came across Pope Francis Laudato Si, his encyclical, I suddenly realized the issue of human rights is not just a right, but it's also an obligation. It is a moral question. And once we begin to understand, we must do unto others what you will not do to yourself, right? I mean, you must respect everybody's rights and beliefs. There is no such thing as monoculture in this world. Life is about diversity. The resilience, the adaptability of our ecology, human ecology as well as biological planetary ecology, is about diversity. The greater the diversity, the more resilient, the ability to absorb shocks, to adapt, right? To adapt. But if everybody is the same, identical, monoculture is dangerous. It becomes fragile. Because if that monoculture is wrong, it will be vulnerable to attacks by viruses, as we have just seen. And if the assumptions are wrong, the paradigm is wrong, and you have no alternatives. Whereas if you have a very diverse, but having that diversity means that you have to live and respect each other's different points of view and live with each other. Even though you may not like each other, it does not matter, okay? What matters is, can we work together on preserving our planet, preserving life, preserving our biodiversity, or do we just consume everything, saying that I want my forest for myself and I don't want to give it to you? So, if you really read the old stories about common laws, what is a common law? What is community? Community, communion, common law comes from the fact that we all share the global commons, right? If you privatize the commons, you deny my access, to my neighbor. You deny the grazing of my cattle, okay? And it does not matter that you can have your own little garden, but we share the same air, we share the same water, we share the same soil. You poison your soil will poison my soil. So we must work together. And working together is a moral question. It's not just economic, it is moral. And that's why, I'm not a particularly religious person, but I do believe, if there is a religion that I'm very close to, it is Buddhism, because it is open, it is complex, it does not blame others, it looks inward to yourself. Know yourself, know your role in society, and after you understand that, life is not, about self. It really is about the whole environment and your role in society and your role in the planet. Suddenly I've lost your... Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Sorry. Thank you, Andrew. I'm really convinced by your argument that we should challenge the assumption of optimized individual as a concept or a paradigm of existing economics at the moment. And it returns to your very great note on the problems with dichotomic understanding that you addressed in the beginning of your speech. Thanks very much. And if I may, just trying to give you like a kind of a brief question. Given the questions individuals are considering, what other facts or questions do you think young scholars should bear in mind?
Well, young scholars, should always ask. Life is not about answers. Life is all about asking the right questions, right? This is exactly what I learned as a young man, okay? I was very fortunate. I had some very, very good mentors. For example, let me give you a simple example. I had a mentor who was a Korean journalist. He was one of the first Asian managers working in the Reuters. And, he witnessed the Korean War. He witnessed the tumultuous changes in Asia. And, as a young man, listening to him, I learned a lot. And what he told me was, never read what the newspaper says, read what the official communications do not say. So suddenly I realized there is verbal communication, there is, there is written communication, but there is below that another message that is the non-information. And so if you don't understand, you suddenly get misinformation, disinformation, fake news, and all that issue. So to a large extent, whenever you get presented something, why don't you ask, do I believe this? You can ask somebody else, older, wiser, or even your friend, do you believe this? And then if the other person have a different point of view, don't just say, I don't believe you, I don't trust you, and therefore I am going to look only at what? That's exactly where we are. We are today all in social bubbles, right? Decoupling is about social bubbles, okay? I don't want to listen to you because I don't like you. I consider you the devil, you are evil, and I'm the good one. And the other side, the exact reverse. So the more the polarization occurs, you cannot heal. And if you cannot heal, you cannot advance, right? And this is the real danger, that you end up not with a win-win situation, you end up with a lose-lose situation. And that is the real danger. We are going to lose-lose, not just in terms of trade, but in terms of capital, in terms of emotions, right? Because every day for the last 4 years, let me say this, every day I woke up in anger, in rage, because I hear something that makes me angry. Do I like this? I don't like this. I want to have hope, right? I want to share our happiness rather than every day talk about, this guy is bad, or that guy is evil, or, you guys are wrong. I don't want to hear that. I mean, it's not that I cannot hear it. It's just that life is about a balance. I want to hear both good and bad. And so that with the good and bad, I can judge for myself whether we are right or wrong. So we are really at wrap-up time. So, Kim.
Yep. Thanks very much. Well, after all, after this session, I have to say that, Andrew, you are indeed the inspiring mentor of all of the young scholars around the world. And, I have to wrap up this session. And then, so first of all, on behalf of YSI, I really would like to express our deepest gratitude to Andrew Sheng for his great message. And with that, the first part of this session is so wrap, but the second part is about to begin. But first, back to the studio. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Andrew. You've covered a lot of ground and a ton of great questions have come up. With that, it's not over yet. It's now time to refine these questions and to figure out together which ones we're going to be adding to the constellation. For that, let's beam back over to Sasha.
Hi, glad to have you back in our constellation. And now we move to the second part of this session. In the next about 20 minutes, we are going to work on the most liked questions that we have received. And by the end of it, we hope to perfect these questions enough that they can potentially be someone's favorite and end up among the 100 questions chosen by the plenary. So we are going to take a look at 3 questions here in detail, although you can see other questions as well. While we are working on them, the first and foremost thing to do is to submit phrasings. Now, below the question, in each case, you will see a button suggest a rephrasing for this question. And you can click it and submit a different way that we could be asking this specific question. And as you can also see, these questions can, these different phrasings can have likes. So your likes will move to the phrasing that you think is best. And finally, if the phrasing has the most likes, it will take over as the main phrasing for that particular question. We are going to now go one by one through 3 of these questions. First, we can consider the question that was first asked to Andrew, which is, why are the big tech the winners of the pandemic? And here we have already one other phrasing, which has been, in fact, a different question, which we merged with this one because it was on the same issue, which is, how could we research the political economy of the emergence and omnipotence of the big techs? The first phrasing has 7 and the second has 4 likes, as you can see. And I now ask you to think of ways we could be asking this question and submit a phrasing. If you have something you would want to say, you're very much welcome to unmute yourselves, to raise your hand, and we'll call upon you so that you can also make your comment. This is now going to be about 3 minutes on this specific question. Okay, we can see that for other questions, in fact, we have some new phrasings. For this one, we seem to be happy with the 2 phrasings we got. Yes, Adam, please.
Yes, thank you, Sasha. I would just like to encourage everybody to think about which person from economic history could, which theories of economic history can be adapted to this topic. So Andrew mentioned Karpolanyi, but I would be really interested about your opinions. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. We have two more phrasings for this question now. One is, what are the geopolitics of big tech companies between China and the US? And how can the wins from big tech be shared among the losing sectors as a result of the pandemic? Now, okay, this is a more redistributional question than the previous one. That could also be a good way to approach it. As I said, you can switch your likes. So if you think maybe that a different phrasing is better, you can in fact go for that one, and thus we can determine which one we like the most. And with that, we're going to move to the second question. So now we want to consider the question that has gained a lot of likes. I think most of the likes within this session, which is the question, yes, here now it should be highlighted, hopefully. What is the most important ethical, moral issue for economics to address? Here we have this phrasing. We also have another one. What are the solutions for the most important ethical, moral issues for economics to address? You can go for any of these two or submit another one. Also, Andrew discussed it quite elaborately, so maybe some of what he said can help us find additional phrasings for this one. Audra, please tell us what you think.
Well, I loved Andrew's talk. He's so inspiring, such a great way to start the day. I've been trying, I don't know if anybody else has any better ideas, but I've been trying to figure out how to make this more multidisciplinary, you know, kind of feeding off of what Andrew had said. So I've been rewriting my rephrasing. I don't know if anybody else has any other ideas that maybe we can talk about and put it in there.
For now, this is what we got. So if you have additional rephrasings, please submit.
Yeah,
that would be great.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how we can. He has such great lines, like see, if we're only looking at parts of the elephant, we're missing the whole. Like, the purpose of economics is good.
It's true. Okay, we have another phrasing now. What is the purpose of economics? I guess I will submit another phrasing here. I feel we can also link this to the whole issue about like the descriptive, explanatory, and the normative side of economics. Rebecca, do you maybe want to say something? We don't hear you.
Hey, yeah, I just want to urge you all to actually join in the debate about these. Thank you. Yeah, so I think it's a little sad to see when you guys don't actually join in on the talk, because I mean, there's so much to talk about here. So, but I'm in the studio, so I don't want to take the talk from you. So guys, please participate, please talk. Thank you.
Don't forget that we are writing, even if we are not talking. This question, by the way, now has gotten a lot of different phrasings, which is great. And they're quite interesting. One is, which moral and ethical concerns ought to be considered within the scope of economics? Another one is, how can economists deal with the challenging ethical dilemmas of the 21st century? I also tried to submit one, but that one doesn't appear for some reason. But you can continue liking different phrasings for this particular question if you think some are better than others. We are going to move now to the third, which is related to climate change. What is economics' role in climate change mitigation? This formulation has 7 likes. We have another 2 here. One, what is the role of economics in climate change mitigation? Well, that sounds like the same thing. Yeah, it's basically just a different wording. And then we have another one, are economic models ready to handle climate change? So here we can see whether we maybe want to add something or we want to switch between these. Adam, do you maybe have something to add in this one?
It's a great question. I'm just thinking about it. So maybe the others can jump in. So that is not really my field of expertise.
Yeah, it is not easy to come up with new phrasings on the spot. I guess we all need time. Audrey, did you want to say something else, or am I just saying the same?
Oh, well, I'm actually going to kind of say the same thing. So it's not necessarily new, but it is a new hand. So I guess that this, I keep harping back on like all of his great quips, but I really like that, like kind of like how we can work together and how economics can contribute to the conversation and not dominate the conversation. Maybe, you know, yeah, I'm struggling with this one, but it's a really good one.
Yeah.
I know that didn't add a lot, I'm sorry, but.
It's good. It's good to share the thought process in any case, I think, for everyone. We'll take another minute here. Maybe something pops up, and then we will move into choosing our favorites. Okay, there seem to be some new phrasings here. Are economic models ready to handle climate change? And then how can economists contribute to the solutions to climate change? This is another one. But we still have the original formulation having more slides. The point is that as we will close the rephrasing and liking tools soon, the formulation which has the most likes will be the one which we will be able to choose as our favorite. And the other ones will not be there for that purpose. So that is why we have we should push for the formulation we think is best.
Maybe just a minor comment.
Yeah, please.
Again, I just emphasize that I'm not an expert of this topic. That what is the difference between moral and ethical issues? Because it is not very clear. For me.
This is a big one.
Yeah, good question.
I could spend a lot of time on this. Well, I guess, yeah, depends whom you ask, but I guess you could say that ethics is a discipline that deals with morality or morals, but you also can say that morality consists of principles, and ethical approach does not have to be based on a particular principle. For example, ancient Greek people had ethics, but not necessarily moral principles. Moral principles are more an invention of modernity, I guess. But that's a longer conversation. So, okay, I think we kind of exhausted our capacities here, and we can now move into choosing our favorites. This is the final part of our session. Now what you can do is you can, on the left part of the right-hand side panel, click on the star. You have 10 stars to give for different questions, and these will be then counted for deciding our best 100 questions. Now we can see whether we think some of the questions in these sessions were interesting. These do not only have to be the 3 questions we just talked about. They can also be Andrew's questions, which you can see up there. What major developments have impacted the field in the past 12 months, real world or from your research? Which new priorities in policy circles or contested issues in public debate can be observed? Which shifts in themes and questions in our research field can be observed? And our 3 questions: why are the big tech the winners of the pandemic? What is economics' role in climate change mitigation? And finally, what is the most important ethical moral issue for economists to address? These are the questions that we can choose for favorites here. And if you want to, you can do that. You can continue doing that also in the further sessions that will be occurring in this constellation. And with that, we are going to stop here, and we are going to hand it back to Thomas and Jay and Heske in the studio. Thanks for participation, and see you soon again.
Hi, Zaja, and welcome back to the Lighthouse. Let's go out into see how all these questions that we just added now looks like. We're back in the whole galaxy, and you can see that this question session, just like all the question sessions we had yesterday, have created new questions that have placed themselves here. You see they're all close to the economic visions constellation, but now you'll see all the questions in the graph. So this was the first question session of the day, and the blue ones are Andrew Sheng's questions, all the white ones are the questions that you just submitted. And here we are back in the economic visions constellations, where you can see that now there's actually a lot of questions. Some of the yellow stars are bigger. In a second, all the red ones, those are the questions that you did not agree on. When Sasha finally closes the sessions, they're going to disappear. The big ones are because they got the most likes. And all the way over there on the right, you can then see the questions that are now in the constellation. Even though the session ended, if you didn't get to place your favorites, you can go back and during the entire plenary at any given time, you can place your favorites either on the speaker's questions or on the questions that were selected by you or created by you. And that's how in a few days we will get to a list of 100 questions for YSI. Okay, we will see you in a couple of hours for Alicia Bacena.